Hi, thanks for watching this video on the Audrain Museum Network. If you're not a subscriber, do it right now. Hit that subscribe button and the bell icon to be notified when new content comes up here. Hi, I'm Donald Osborne, and I'd like to welcome you to the Audrain Automobile Museum and our new exhibition, Early Landmarks in Automotive Engineering. This exhibition runs from December 10th, 2022 through March 5th, 2023. It will cover one of the most exciting periods, I feel, in the development of the automobile, from the turn of the 20th century through to the start of World War II. And I'm joined by the executive director of the museum, David DiMuzio, to explain a little bit about why we put this exhibition on. David.
Hello, Donald.
Good evening.
Good evening.
This is, I have to say, you know, we love cars. We love the way they look. We love the way they feel, the way they sound. But this exhibition, much like our Shining Bright Advanced in Automotive Lighting exhibition, it really gets into the nitty-gritty of how things progress. And this is the type of topic that, of course, engages us because we're sort of geeks, but I think also the general public at large, because people are fascinated by the march of technology and how it shows itself.
And I really think this time period shows it best. There's so much change and variety. It's staggering. And I think we have lots of great highlights here from the collection to illustrate that.
And also, of course, I know that you are a motorcycle guy. When we don't just limit this to cars, we've got some really interesting motorcycles as well that shows, I think, in some ways, how motorcycle development also influenced automobile development. And that's going to be exciting to look at as well.
That's very true. So we'll see the parallels as we talk about what's in the show.
And now this is a show that covers a lot of ground, literally from 1886 to 1939. So in this video, we're not going to show you every one of the vehicles on display, but we will, as we normally have, come back to you with highlight videos during the run of the show that go into a bit more depth about what each of them are.
I can't wait.
Indeed. All right, let's take a look at the first of our highlight groups. As we mentioned before, we'll come back with additional videos that give a more in-depth look at the cars in the exhibition, and they'll be roughly grouped into themes such as A Brave New World, Invention Unbound, and a variety of power. Perhaps things that seem to be new might be old, and also A Toy No Longer. When did the car go from being a plaything to being a practical part of everybody's life in the United States and indeed around the world? To talk a bit about the first part of our story, let's have Alex Cull, our museum coordinator. Hi, Alex.
Hey, Donald.
Now, of course, you remember Alex from the great Ask Alex segments here on the Audrain Museum Network, and you'll have the opportunity when you come to visit us here in the museum to ask Alex some of the questions. So, Alex, I'll ask you a question.
Sure.
What was it that makes this period of automotive development so exciting?
It's kind of like the Wild West of design and engineering. If you owned a bicycle shop or an engineering shop, you heard about the internal combustion motors and you wanted to put some wheels on it, put a frame on it, and make it go. There was nothing standard. You could do whatever you wanted with it. It was a blank slate. I think that's the coolest part.
The fact that there weren't people around to say, you can't do that way, or that's not the way it's done.
Or any safety measures.
Well, safety is a relative thing.
True.
I mean, once you realize that people had been walking or riding a horse, and now they were traveling, hurtling themselves through the air at 5 and 10 miles per hour, oh my God. So this is something I know really excites you. Things from the 1886 Benz Patent Motorwagen, the curved dash Olds, and all of the great advances that happened in a very short period of time. What should visitor guests ask or look for when they come into the gallery?
All the little knickknacks and levers and knobs on cars. Like I said, every car had something different about it that made it special, whether it was the gas, brake, or clutch, or how you started. Everything was different on every car, and they all had their different ideas on how to do it best.
And I know that we've talked a lot about the development in cars and how different propulsion systems now, we think of alternative power sources, but there was no alternative back to the turn of the 20th century because nothing had been decided.
Yep. And the best early cars were actually electric. They were outperforming gas and steam at the time until they caught up.
Well, it's a fascinating journey, and I think that it's really exciting to see with these cars in such close proximity. You know, we've got right here in the gallery the 1886 Benz Patent Motorwagen and the 1939 Alfa 6C 2500. I mean, when you think about the distance of time between those two vehicles, how incredibly short it was.
Yeah, a little over 50 years, you go from something that's one cylinder and, you know, kind of putting along, and then you have a legit race car that is like a rocket ship at the time.
Well, it's an amazing thing, and I know that we'll be talking to you a lot during this exhibition about the various parts of this show and some things which will definitely surprise people. Things they absolutely knew for sure, like what was the role of the Model T in mass production? We won't give them the answer now, but just come back. Alex will tell you. Go to the detailed videos, we'll talk about topics such as a great leap forward, where technology in drivetrains really makes a great advance, and then the cylinder wars, one of the most exciting parts of this story for me, the story of what happened in the most unlikely times to develop some of the most extraordinary engines ever seen, and finally, airplanes for the road, when aerodynamics really began to play a meaningful part in the design and build of automobiles. To help tell this part of the story, I'm joined by our associate curator here at the Audrain, Mr. Ben Chester.
Donald,
Ben.
thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So this I know because you're a guy that loves fast cars and interesting technologies. So this is the part of the show that sort of really connects to you.
Well, I'm a big power guy, but the Panda has sort of brought me back to, you know, the ground, but more power equals more smiles.
The technology involved in building a great utility like the Fiat Panda is undeniably an exciting story, but we're telling a different one right now,
sure.
But that's okay.
All right, we can save it.
You know, this part of the show talks about things like the front-wheel drive Cord L29, the amazing 100-mile-per-hour, 265 horsepower, double overhead cam Duesenberg Model J, Bugattis, and amazing cars like the Chrysler Airflow, and of course, the car that bookends this exhibition with the Benz Patent Motorwagen, the Alfa 6C 2500. So what here really sort of strikes you?
Well, in this period, we're now in the late 20s, early to mid 30s, and the rich were getting richer, and they had higher and higher expectations. So cars like the Duesenberg that's in front of us, this was a race engine and a race chassis. And Duesenberg found a way to take that performance, a car that takes you to 60 miles an hour in first gear and well over 100 miles an hour in a body like this. I don't know how, but they figured out how to take that performance and make it supple and make it very quiet and comfortable and elegant. And that was really the theme to me of the 30s with the 16-cylinder Marmons and the Cadillacs that were competing against each other. It was, how do we get more and more and more power and torque out of these engines, but quieter, smoother, and more effortlessly?
You hit the nail on the head, because for a lot of the development of the automobile, especially those which were forged in a racing environment, like a Bugatti or like a Duesenberg, the idea was they simply made engines bigger and bigger to make them more powerful. But then they began to discover true efficiencies in engine making. And somehow you could suddenly have a much smaller engine produce the same amount of power that an 8 and 10 liter engine did before World War I. And when you have cars like the Marmon and the Cadillac V16s, it was all about smoothness. It wasn't about ultimate power. The Duesenberg had more power. But it was about making an engine that was almost imperturbable in its action.
Yeah, cars like the 38 Packard 12 that we have over here, we drive these in weddings very often, and we often get out of the vehicle today and not realize they're still running. They're so quiet. And that was really the beauty of these things, is that you're moving down the road so calmly that your passengers at this point really didn't even, you know, become aware of what was going on and all of the craziness that's happening under the hood.
And again, it's the 1930s.
Right.
And remember, just 30 years before, we have single cylinders and two-cylinder cars that were anything but smooth and quiet and silent.
Yeah.
So again, the the reach and depth of the imagination of the engineers and how these car manufacturers represented that and realized it is quite astonishing. And that's something that you can see walking from one side of the gallery to the other.
Yeah, it's truly fantastic. And this was a period that really cemented a lot of the innovations into modern motoring. So a lot of the things that were brought to fruition in this period we still see today, which is great.
And of course, everyone knows that most of the cars today, to their design detriment, frankly, for most of them, are designed with aerodynamics in mind, but this also is not a new thing. I mean, we have our wonderful Chrysler Airflow and that beautiful Alfa 6C 2500 by Carrozzeria Touring. And they show how in the 1930s they were using wind tunnels to help shape cars, again, for efficiency. Not necessarily for fuel economy, they didn't really care about that so much, but for efficiency, and that's something that's great to see as well.
Yeah, those two cars, especially the Airflow, to me, being a mid-30s car, created here in the United States, was so far ahead of its time and was so efficient, and still today, everyone that gets a chance behind the wheel, I say, you just think of yourself 70 years ago and how advanced this felt, because even today it still stands up in modern traffic, and just a great thing to look at, of course.
And of course, I can't help but make a great commercial here for the Audrain Museum Network, because of course, here at the Audrain, we believe in bringing the cars out into the public, on the roads, experiencing these cars the way their builders intended. And so we've got in videos on the Audrain Network, in Mansions and Motor Cars at Belcourt, we've got the Bugatti Type 57. We have the Marmon 16 in a video of me driving it, and in the video with Jay driving it in another episode of Mansions and Motor Cars. We've got the Airflow in yet another episode of Mansions and Motor Cars. So you actually get to see and hear these cars in action, which is another thing that I think helps to make this exhibition come alive. It's something we try to do here at the Audrain all the time.
Definitely, and I think a combination of seeing them in person and grasping the size and understanding what they're like when you're standing next to them, and then sitting down and seeing them in motion alongside, to me, seeing them alongside a normal Hyundai Elantra is really what brings the picture of how big and how graceful these cars are today.
It's an amazing thing, and I think that all of the visitor guests that come to this show are going to experience such an incredible range of cars here and such an incredible range of stories. And we're just touching on those stories right now. We'll bring them to you in greater depth, and we'll also touch on the motorcycles in the show as well. So there's a lot for people to look forward to.
I'm excited.
Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, Donald.
We hope you've enjoyed this very brief look into our exhibition, Early Landmarks in Automotive Engineering, which runs here at the Audrain from December 10th, 2022 through March 5th, 2023. As we mentioned before, we'll be posting additional videos with a more in-depth look at the cars and motorcycles in the exhibition. And of course, if you're a subscriber to the Audrain Museum Network, you'll get the first crack at knowing when we post these. Click the subscribe button and also, of course, the bell icon to be notified when new content comes up. We'd like to welcome you here in the gallery for this exhibition and to see all the exciting things that we'll be doing at the Audrain in 2023. Thanks for watching.